We are live.
We're
If you
live.
are
Here we
just
are.
tuning in, then you will notice on your screen, left and right, there is Debbie Foster and Jay McAllister. Oh my gosh, they are competitors. How could they ever?
I already told you I don't have competitors. I'd never ever. I don't even use that word. It's like a bad word.
All right, so we've established from the beginning the word competitors will be labeled as a swear word. It is banned from now
Perfect.
on until the end of this. So,
$20. Every time you use it, you got to give me
all
$20.
right. This could get expensive, guys. So we'll try to
Right.
refrain. So, I think most people are probably aware of the fact, maybe, but I'll just set the record straight. I think most people are aware of the fact that um, this is all done in the name of fun and collaboration. But if not, then now you know. Now, so it's interesting. So I have heard sort of you and about you for the last several years. I just want to share one thing about you that I think was sort of funny.
Okay.
Um,
Uh-oh.
I
And we should preface for everyone that we met for 30 seconds in the green room before this. We have not had a single conversation ever. So this is okay, go. What you
right.
got?
Although we already have some contractual arrangement in which I'm ordered to pay a money, or it's a mutual engagement, right? So although I feel it may be more easier than one to make sure we maintain that. But okay, so here's the funny thing. So I started my company 12 years ago. And I think there's some interesting similarities I'd like to ask you about there as well, because I think we have some sort of our background maybe slightly similar. We started as a managed IT company, so we were helping majority of professional service firms to implement better technology. About six or seven about 7 years ago is when I decided to start focusing on legal. We can get into some of that if we have time. I thought and I did such an exhaustive search. Like there was no such thing as ChatGPT at that time.
Hmm.
Debbie, I thought I had envisioned an entirely brand new business model in the legal tech consulting. I'm like, no one's doing this. No one's doing. And then I started hearing this name, Debbie Foster. Who is Debbie Foster? So I looked you up and I was instantly deflated. I was like, oh man, she's got a big head start. It looks like she's about 20 years into this. So I felt like a total idiot. But that was sort of my first run in with your name, and then over time, I mean, there have been countless people like Rob Joyner's one of them, Bob Ambrogi,
Hmm.
Guy Sokolow. A lot of these guys have referred me to you and said like, hey, you ought to. Philip Fairley is one of them. Like, hey, you ought to talk with Debbie. Um, and I don't know whether it was just timing or whatever it might be, but never had the chance to do it. So I'm glad we finally, the conditions of this weird, crazy challenge, which I'm happy to give you some insight on that too. But I'm glad that kind of created the conditions for us to meet and in such a unique way. I don't have you done anything like this before? A first meeting live in
No.
front of everyone?
No, I've never done it before. That's why I was like, yeah, I'll do that. That sounds amazing. Let's do it.
Yeah.
So, and so it's funny because when you tagged me in that post, I was like, I don't know this guy. That's really strange. We live in a really small world. This is really weird. So I went to your website and I saw that the Centerbase logo was there. So I took a screenshot of it and I sent it to Rob Joyner and I said, "Who is this guy? What's going on?" And Rob said very nice things about you and said you guys should definitely connect. So I was like, all
Oh,
right. So here we are. Yeah. So I haven't I've followed a bit of your journey. I've watched a couple of the videos over the last week. How's it going?
insane. By the way, I paid Rob to say that. So Rob,
Oh,
if you're
good.
watching this or if you see it later, thank you for fulfilling your duties, our contractual duties. There's a lot of money exchange happening already. Um,
Yes.
so how is it going? So for context, for those of you who may not know, which at this point is probably a few, because I've seemed to be, it's just flooding the internet with this content for better or worse. I am about at the end of October, I realized that there were some objectives that I was woefully inadequate at, or it wasn't looking good. I'll just say that I was going to complete these objectives by the end of the year. So I decided that I was going to, I'm a planner and I'm a strategist. So typically anytime I undergo any sort of initiative, I put a lot of thought into the strategy. So for once, I decided I'm going to circumvent having a perfect strategy by just taking massive action towards a goal. So I looked at all of the metrics that I was currently. By the way, I should say the goal was to increase lead flow. Right. And most of my business has been built on organic referrals, strategic introductions, things like
Mm-hmm.
that. So I decided, let me take all the metrics, all the things that are working well, which it was 6 domains, and I decided I was going to not 2x, not 3x, not even 10x, but I was going to 100x all of my activities in those particular domains, which sounds crazy, and actually, like 13 days in, I'll tell you it is crazy, but also I wanted to sort of stress test my own abilities, and I knew I needed a reset. I needed to redefine what hard and what adequate volume looked like. So this has already sort of broken some limiting beliefs for me, which is the primary objective. I decided to add the cherry on top, and I was like, you know what? Maybe I choose someone who I admire their efforts, and obviously things are working well for you, Debbie. You've built a successful company on these same principles. So I figured, let me take some of the things that she's doing, and then I'll make sure that I 100x those. Like it's a surefire way to make sure that I don't fail in this objective. So I'll say just as a, we're just over a weekend now, and we're already in many categories beating the predicted, results there, and we're, I expect that to increase as we go along the month. I actually shared, if anybody's interested, I shared the specifics if you want to see the stats and how it all measures up.
I'm waiting until the end. I want to see the stats at the end. I want to see how it all comes out in the wash at the end. That's a big. I mean, 100x of one is a lot, right? Whatever it is you're measuring against, 100x of yourself. Like this is what you're doing now. I want to do 100 times what I'm doing. Just that is a lot. So I have great respect for you. Like go big or go home.
Well, I think it's there's two sort of unintended effects that happen. One is that it is now stretching my mind to think in terms of optimization. So like I'm a big believer of, and I tell my clients this all the time, like don't allow scalability to become the thing that actually that inhibits you from succeeding. A lot of times we do things in the name of scalability. Like for example, I had a friend of mine who about a year or two ago, he recognized the fact that I typically tend to be I tend to be very effective in one-to-one conversations from a sales perspective, right? And I had several prospects at the time that were all across the country, various states. And at the time, I think I had 2 or 3 Chicago prospects. And he asked me if I was going to take any of my Chicago prospects to lunch and try to move things forward. And it's like, no, it's not scalable. And it's like, wait a minute. So you're telling me you're kneecapping your own performance in the name of scalability just because you can't see the other clients? So, that was sort of the first indicator to me that that could be a negative
Mm.
aspect, even though it's so often associated with a positive thing. But it's like we're all sort of we're chasing this goal of this like scalability metric, and oftentimes it's an artificial metric that is less important in the short term. If we can at least prove out the model and gain some momentum, then we can think about scalability. So I think that's what's happening now with the 100x challenge. It is, I'm like, for example, I've hired a virtual assistant to help with some of the content posting, right? Because I realize there are certain things I can do to ensure the quality control on the front end, and then at the end, I just need someone to schedule all this stuff. So it doesn't need to be done by me. So that's sort of
Right.
the first unintended consequence. And the other is that, and this is sort of a weird one, there's probably 6 or 7 other professionals who have decided to join in this experiment, which like maybe I should put a disclaimer and say I don't know if people should do this. Like I really don't know. Like it's kind of a dumb experiment, but it's like I needed to do this. If for me it made sense for me, but that's the other thing. So I guess that's sort of fascinating and cool and unique that people are inspired to take action, and end the year on a high note.
Well, for sure. And honestly, if we aren't stretching, and we aren't reaching for something that feels just a little bit outside of our reach, then we're limiting ourselves there. So no matter what happens, whether the math works exactly out to 100x, whatever the number that you started with, the lessons that you're going to learn, the things that you're going to do differently going forward, this will be a fruitful thing because you said, I'm going to do something more than what I'm doing. And I love that.
So tell me about your sort of trajectory, because you've been in the game for almost 30 years now, just working with law
Mm-hmm.
firms, in that capacity. And I know it's taken on various shapes and forms. So
Yep.
I'm actually curious and to know sort of the progression and how it's all developed over the years. Because I would highly doubt that, like from the beginning, it started out with the model that you have now of sort of blending the strategy, the people, the processes, and the tech together. Or maybe
Yeah,
it did, but like, what was
it
your
did not.
progression like?
It did not. I worked for a hardware company and I sold custom built computers. And I would put these computers on people's desks, lawyers, a lot of different professionals, but we did work with a lot of lawyers. And then I would teach them how to play solitaire because that's how lawyers learned how to, that's probably lots of people learned how to use a mouse, right? Single click, double click, drag and drop, teach them how to play solitaire. And then it started, well, what other software programs can I use? And now I have this computer on my desk, and for many of them, it was the first time. How do I think about running my business differently? And so I met this lawyer in 1996 or seven, and we were talking about these computers are really cool. What kind of software could help a law firm? And we pulled out the Florida Bar Journal and we started flipping through, and we found a couple of software programs. Called the 1-800 number. They faxed me a bunch of information. I still have a binder clip of all those faxes. And flipping through going, this looks really amazing. And so I was like, I don't really know how to do it, but I'll do it for you and I'll do it for cheaper and we'll kind of figure it out together. And she was like, yes, let's do it. So I implemented Amicus and PC Law for this woman in 1997. And that is really how it all started. I left that hardware company in 1998 because I really wanted to focus on the software. I was very intrigued by how people could use technology to run their businesses better. And for the first year or so, I would go to a law firm, then I would go to an accounting firm, then I'd go to a real estate agent, then I'd go see a recruiter, then I would go see a financial planner, and then I would go to a manufacturing company, and then I would go to a bait shop. And I was learning all about all these software programs that ran these different kinds of businesses. And I was exhausted one day, and I said to the person who did our billing at the time, what do we have the most of? And she said, I think we have the most lawyers. And I was like, let's just work with lawyers. Let's just cut to the chase and let's just work with the lawyers. She was like, what will we do about Todd from Bayshore? And I'm like, yeah, well, we'll deal with him. Like, I'm not going to fire him today, but like, let's really double down. So we started working with some local bar associations. They were like, hey, can you speak at a luncheon? And I was like, never done that before, but sure, I can do anything, right? Anybody can do anything. So I started presenting to lawyers at these local bar associations. And then that became, can you do something for the Florida bar? And then before you know it, I was at ABA Tech Show. And then I got on the board of ABA Tech Show. And then I started getting involved in ILTA and ALA and all the other organizations. And I just got in the vertex of legal. And one of the things that happened during that time, and this was early on, I went to training to be an amicus consultant, and this was in 1999. And it was the worst training. I mean, I hadn't really attended a whole lot of trainings, but it was really bad. And there was a cocktail hour at the end, and I said to the CEO of the company, I said, that was terrible. That training was awful. And he said, do you want to do our training? And I was like, sure, I'll do it. So that company for 10 years, from 1999 to 2000 to 2010, paid me 5 or 6 times a year to train a group of somewhere between 3 and 20 people who wanted to be technology consultants for law firms and implement this practice management software program. If they wanted to do that, they had to take a 4-day class that I taught. At the time, of course, I had no idea what that was going to mean for my career. But what I know today is that That's how I got to know everyone in this business. That's how I banned the word competition. I'm like, these people aren't competition. I'm going to cooperate with them to help them build successful businesses, because more successful technology consultants and law firms are good for me. And so some of my very best friends are people who came and took a 4-day class that I taught on how to be
Mm.
an amicus consultant. So that's a big part of that story. And then, I joke and say I spent the first half of my career convincing lawyers to use computers, to buy computers and invest in the technology. And I've spent the second half of my career trying to help them run better businesses and think differently about how they get their work done, think differently about how they make decisions, think differently about strategy, think differently about how they lead people. Because the technology is great, the software is great, but it's not great if they don't use it. And it's
Mm.
not great if they don't eliminate the silos. And it's not great if they don't try to streamline their processes. And it's not great if they don't really understand what their clients see as valuable and deliver the services that the clients see are valuable. And so there's just a whole business around, great lawyers don't really know how to run businesses. I don't even like to say they weren't taught that in law school, because there's lots of things I was taught in school that I don't know how to do now. Like it's it's if you're not going to do it every day, if you're not going to repeat it, if you're not going to, like, you could have done 100x for one day, but you didn't do it for one day. You did it for 30 days because you want something to continue past that, right?
No, no,
You
no.
don't want to just go
I
back.
did it for 30 days because I
For
could not stomach the idea of doing it for 90 days. I just want to make a quick correction for the
but
record there.
but you'll do something different after this. You'll decide where you're going to settle in. And for me, that was a big part of this is, you know, how can we step in and help lawyers think differently about business strategy, which includes technology now, because there's no such thing as business strategy without technology. How do we help them think about business strategy, and how do we partner with them to continually improve strategic initiatives and strategic objectives that are going to help their firm get ready for the future? How do we become their partner to do that? And it doesn't matter what it is. Could be succession planning, it could be strategy, it could be leadership, it could be a technology implementation, it could be workflow, it could be automation, it could be AI. Doesn't matter what it is. Partner with us and we're just going to help you on that journey. And that's kind of
Mm.
how it went from how it started to where it is now.
So you said a lot of things there. One thing I want to address is that your story almost sounded, I couldn't help but compare the sort of the hardware based start that you had and compare and sort of that natural that curiosity in regards to what the computer could be used for, the capability, that sort of raw untapped potential. I couldn't help but compare that to the current stage of technology we're in now with the advancements of AI, because there's a lot of intrigue and curiosity about what we're seeing there's sort of this untapped potential, and there's this intelligence that we now have access to on demand, and how can we apply this to legal workflows to create more meaningful work, either better products or faster, right? And then there's obviously the whole conundrum of how do you price your services, but from the perspective of what's available. I think it's interesting because I wouldn't think that back in the 90s that you would have, attorneys have always notoriously been known to be laggards when it comes to adoption of new technology. So that's very fascinating that you had an experience where someone was actually interested, like after they learned how to play solitaire and were able to, maneuver
Mm-hmm.
the computer. It's like, how can we apply this to what we're doing now in order to create more effective work product? That's very fascinating to me. You know, Nowadays the way where we're currently positioned is that there's a lot of hype surrounding these tools, and especially when it comes to AI capabilities. I just 2 hours ago, as part of my 100x, I just did a live stream webinar with one of my clients who's a managing partner of sort of a mid-market firm in Northern California. And the whole focus was talking about AI and how she's currently using it. She's primarily using it for a sort of practice of law applications within her firm, which I thought was unique. Because in my experience, many of my attorney clients have focused on business of law, aspects first, like automated time capture, those type of things,
Mm-hmm.
or drafting, marketing copy, things like that, before they dove headfirst into practice of law applications. So that's interesting, but I think it's just, what I'm understanding is that there's an overall level of skepticism relating to the actual, like what is the real tangible day-to-day benefit. Like every time I speak about AI, some topic relating to AI, I'm typically asked by whoever the event organizer is, I'm typically asked to include practical examples from, things that my clients are doing today, because I think there's a lot of theory out there, and there's a desire and there's an appetite for real world use cases. So it's
Agree.
fascinating. I wonder, how this will all develop, and will we wind up, will the computer, as the computer kind of became the de facto way for practicing law, you couldn't see yourself doing it without law. Will AI also become the same, to pursue that same trajectory?
So were you at CleoCon?
Not this year. I was pre
Okay.
2024.
So um, I have you watched Jack's keynote?
Got a whole
So
video, a
yeah.
bunch of them actually. If you
So,
could.
you know, I feel like for me, that keynote, and we've been working with our clients on AI strategy and AI readiness for over a year and a half or so now, really digging in to help them figure it out. And the statistics about AI projects failing are very real, because it isn't really about the technology anymore. We don't really have technology problems anymore. We have people problems, and we have adoption problems, and we have the challenge of creating believers, people who believe that there is a different way to get work done. Because once they believe that, then they're like, okay, how can I really leverage this technology? And I felt like something that Jack did really, really well in his keynote was walking through like the practical day in the life of an attorney. And he said, it's 9 o'clock, you show up for work and this and that, and then this gets prepared and new client intake, and then this happens, and then you have to draft this, extract the dates, the deadlines, they're on your calendar. Like, he actually walked through what it looks like. And I walked out of there, and I don't know if you know Steve Embry, but he's a really good friend of
Mhm.
mine, journalist. And I walked out of there and he was like, what'd you think? And I was like, I'm totally fascinated and intrigued by how he showed that. And then I'm comparing watching that to sitting in a strategic planning session with 14 equity partners at a law firm in some random city somewhere, and the disconnect of where those people are and what Jack just showed. Like, it's a universe apart. And that got me into this. I love analogies. I'm a huge analogy person. In fact, I'm sure there are people who want to just say, stop with the analogies. But the immediate image that came into my mind is like, when we drop AI into a law firm, it's like putting a steering wheel on a horse. If you think about AI in cars, like transformative things, but the cars didn't transform society until a whole new infrastructure was built: roads, street signs, street lights, gas stations, suburbs, the Department of Transportation, repair shops, tire shops. Like, that, cars did not transform society until the infrastructure was built. I think that is true for law firms too. AI is here. It's a cool tool. It's like a steering wheel on a horse. Some people might figure out how to use it. Probably not going to make the horse go faster, but they're going to figure out how to use it.
It's just sort
But
of
we've got to
novelty.
build the, yeah, we got to build the infrastructure. How are we going to price things now? What about the billable hour? Will it finally die? I don't think it will, but will it be minimized? How do we pay people? How will we measure the productivity of our associates? How will we resource manage in the world of AI? Like, there's so much infrastructure that
And,
needs to
and also, how do
happen.
we market that? What's the value proposition
Right.
to the consumer?
What is the value proposition? And also, when the firm thinks about the financial implications of AI, the first question is, wait, so I'm going to be able to do that thing that I could bill 5 hours for now, and now it's only going to take me 1 hour, so I'm only going to bill for 1 hour? And then the second side of that is, yep, and you have to pay for the tool that let you do the thing that you used to get $1,000 for, and now you only get 200, and you got to give $50 of that to the tool, right? We have to figure out the economics of how AI will transform the law firm. What will it look like? I believe it's going to happen. It's just going to be like driving a Ferrari on a dirt road for a little while. We got to figure out how to build the right infrastructure to make it happen. So if anybody has not watched Jack's keynote, I would strongly recommend that you Google Jack Newton, Cleo Con keynote and watch it. It's an hour or so long, but it's well worth it. And it's well worth to see the thought leadership that's going into what the day in the life of a lawyer could look like.
Agreed, right? That, I mean, just it's interesting how the analogy, the car analogy, fits so well to the AI analogy, because I was thinking as you were speaking about the horse and the steering wheel, it's like you're seeing that now with EVs and self-driving cars by extension. Is like the technology existed to create a great EV long before we had the infrastructure, but they didn't really take off until you set up your charging infrastructure, right?
Right.
Because there was the whole concept of range anxiety, and then how do you schedule repairs, and how do you ultimately create an environment where people are comfortable with the fact that that car is driving itself, right? Like you're
Mm-hmm.
seeing the Tesla robo taxi and the Waymos,
The
and
Waymos and yeah.
yeah, like you're seeing that, and people, but it sort of required, the technology was there, like it was technically capable of performing, carrying
Mm-hmm.
out these tasks, but it's like there were these underlying structures that needed revision before we had a system that was compatible with the new technology. So that's an interesting metaphor that you draw there. But let me ask you this, since I know we only have 3 more minutes, and I have some burning questions that I wanted to
Okay.
ask you. So one would be, if you could look at any process within a law firm that's still being handled like it was 1995, and you could wave a magic wand and make it go away overnight, what would that be?
Intake. I just think if law firms did intake better, so many things would flow, like gathering all electronic. How do we make it easy for our clients to work with it? Work with us? Why is it so hard for them to get a call back from a lawyer? Why is it so hard to share information about what you need, what kind of legal services you need? And I think that if we started at intake and we were able to see the difference between how we used to do it and how we do it now, we would want to then go down that journey of all the other things and figure out how to make them better.
Mm. It's funny that you mentioned that, because mine would actually be slightly related to intake, but it's just more so lead capture. Because I
Mm-hmm.
know many attorneys. I just posted about this the other day. How I've heard this sentiment from many of my clients, which is like, if you do good work, then everything else takes care of itself, and that couldn't be further from the truth, in my opinion. You have to be able to perform that quality, that high quality of work, but you also have to be willing to go out there and request referrals and have strategic partners, and run through various marketing channels. Those things are sort of a requirement, and many firms don't do that. And I kind of group myself in that bucket as well.
Yeah,
But
we can all do better.
yeah. And then the other question I have for you is, if you could do, and please don't cop out on this one, I won't let you. If you could do anything, um, but not get paid for it, what would it be?
Like anything within my current job but not get paid for it, if I could just be whatever I wanted to be in the whole world and not get paid for it. Ooh. Um what would I, oh wow, that's a hard question. What would you be? To give me
I
another
mean, I
minute to
wasn't
think
I wasn't
about it.
prepared to answer that. I was gonna wait for you. Piggyback off of yours. What would
If
I
I could
be?
do
So
anything.
so I'll tell you that I'll give you this. I would love to be an astronaut. It's always been a sort of an aspirational goal of mine since I was a kid. I noticed when I was looking you up, you had goals of being a firefighter at one point. I also did had that, but I don't know if that's just sort of like societal programming. But astronaut was cool until I saw the Challenger accident, and I'm like, ooh,
Mm.
ooh, that's gonna be tough. So that sort of scared me away for a while. But I have always been intrigued by the prospect of, as you can't see behind me, but I have a poster of Neil deGrasse Tyson behind me that he signed, and he did his first live show post COVID in Chicago. And I've always been fascinated with the prospect of space exploration, and just seeing that. Like, have you seen that pale blue dot photo where you see that the Earth is just like a pinpoint dot, and it's like the fact, like that concept of like everything and everyone you love and know is all in this little segment. That's just so cool to me. So I'd love to see it with my own naked eye.
I don't like I'm struggling with like coming up with a career choice. I think that if I could, of all of the things that I love to do, all of the things that I love to do, I love coaching and mentoring people. I love that. If I could just do that, entrepreneurs wanting to start a business. Like, I remember one day I was getting my nails done, and my nail person said, "I really wish we could start our own nail shop." And I said, "Well, why don't you?" And she was like, "Oh, it costs like $12,000 to do it." And I said, "Well, what if I gave you $12,000? And you have to pay me back, obviously, but what if I did that? And then you started your own business?" And she was like, "I mean, it's not really why I was asking you." And I was like, "Right, but put a business plan together. Tell me what it would look like. And then I will be your advisor." I would love to do that. That's the job I would love to do. I'd love for someone to just, I don't need a lot of money, but I'd love to just have a pile of cash over here to find people who are like, "Gosh, I wish I could start something." And I say, "What do you want to start? You do the legwork. Tell me what the plan looks like. I'll fund it. You have to pay me back, and I'll be your advisor for like year one or year two." I would love to do that. That would be like
Mm.
the best job ever.
Do you feel you have a pretty good sense for judging character? Because I'd imagine
Yeah.
that's got to be a big part of that.
Yeah.
You know?
I work with lawyers. You gotta figure that out.
Yeah. Okay. Well, there's still time for that, so
Right.
we'll tell everyone to stay tuned on
Yes, right.
Debbie's next
Exactly.
big philanthropy mission. So this
Yes.
was really cool. I'm glad we got to do this. I had a third question, which is, will you just give me your company, just sign it over? But I don't want to be too forward, so we'll wait till our next call for me to ask you
We'll wait
that.
till and why don't we go ahead? So I'll just say to you, like, are you willing to commit right now that on day 31, post 30 day, that we're going to jump on a live together and we're going to talk about whether you dethroned me or not?
I love the idea. I will absolutely do that. Yeah, I will
Okay.
absolutely do that. The and for those of you who don't know what Debbie's referencing, I have a list called the Dethrone Debbie Directive, which lists all of her stats that I could find publicly available. Which I probably need to send you a follow-up email to find out, because I've heard since then there's been several individuals who've critiqued my methodology and said, "Debbie, live speaking engagements 3 a month? No, she's doing way more." So I'll
I've already
probably.
done 3 this week.
Oh,
So
damn it, Debbie.
um,
You're
you might
killing
need
me.
to up that number a little.
Yeah, I don't know why I committed. I said, if she increases her volume, I'm going to still keep the 100x, and she won't be able to. But you're making me eat my words here, Debbie. So, but this was really cool. Honestly, I had not met you before, and I thought it would be a fun way to, to kind of, to get you on here on a live, and people could see our first meeting. I think honestly, for those of you who are watching still, um, to me, this is a really this I have to give you kudos, Debbie, because the way that you approach a first meeting with someone and having that curiosity about them and asking follow-up questions and really listening and responding, it is no wonder to me that you've been able to build what you have. um, like I told you in a LinkedIn message, I'm a big fan. So I did want you to know that I was a little, and like when I was making the post, I was like a little nervous. I'm like, oh, I hope she doesn't take it the wrong way and think I'm like, some
No,
evil guy who's trying to actually like dethrone her. But this is really cool. So we definitely will have to do it again. And I'm glad I
I would love
now
to.
know you, have you in my Rolodex, and
You have me
I'm
in your
glad.
Rolodex. I would love to, and I'm going to hold you to the 30-day thing. And I appreciate that you found me and said, "Let's roll the dice and see how this works." And I love your suggestion of let's just do it live and see what happens. So it was great.
Well, you got to pick a great target, right? So you serve as the benchmark, and I think that's the whole point of pursuing success, is like you provide a standard. You show me what's possible. So now it's like, well, if Debbie can do it, I should be able to do it as well. So I appreciate you for being that milestone measuring stick for me, and then everyone else who's looking to achieve at a high level. So thank you.
Absolutely. All right. We're going to talk soon. Good luck.
Sounds good, Debbie.
Keep crushing it.
Thanks. Back at you.
All right. Talk to you later.